Alrighty, I have 10:30. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you may be. I'm Dave Gash. I'm just the moderator for this session. This is Nicole Nardelli. She is in Italy, where it is now 7:30 p.m. So that's not too bad. As we said, sometimes presenters have to work at 2 or 3 in the morning, depending on where they are in the world. That has to be tough.
That's tough, yeah.
Yes. So anyway, I am going to just introduce her and bow out here. I'll be around if anyone needs me. Again, everyone, please feel free to type questions as they come up. Type them into the chat box there. I'll either scroll back or copy them out so that Nicole can try to address those toward the end of her session. And I'm not going to take up any more of your time, Nicole. Nicole Nardelli, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Dave, for this wonderful introduction. And so hello, everyone. First, thank you so much all for joining here today. And I'm super happy to be here and honored to be here to talk to you and to share my experience about what I learned so far in my design journey around how to involve other people inside design work effectively. But before diving into that, I'm Nicole, as Dave already said, and I'm from Italy, as Dave already said, and I work as a product designer at MoneyFarm inside the financial industry. And before joining MoneyFarm, I worked for a while as like in startups as well as agency, mainly as a solo designer. And for me, it was quite tough at the beginning because even though I had the chance to highly influence the product I was working on, I had nobody around to whom I could ask for design-specific feedback or someone who could really challenge my work from a design perspective. So I was feeling quite lonely sometimes, but I wasn't alone in those companies. So I soon realized that I could leverage other people's contribution to improve my design and get feedback on my work. So it's really here through those experiences that I started to be really passionate about how to include others inside design work effectively, because that was actually the only way for me to get feedback on what I was working on and on my work on a daily basis. But after a while, as a solo designer, I decided it was time for me to find out what it would be like to be part of a design team. So I was super lucky here to join the design team at MoneyFarm. And for those of you who don't know what MoneyFarm is a digital investment platform that helps people grow their money by investing in diversified portfolio, which are managed by the company, by MoneyFarm. And inside MoneyFarm, I'm currently embedded in a cross-functional product team, which is responsible for the discovery and the delivery of new financial products that then we sell to our customers both in Italy and in the UK. So since we are dealing with new products, this means that there is a lot that we don't know yet. So a big part of our work is dedicated on really trying to figure out how exactly those products are going to work and how those products are going to fit into our current system. And also, since we are dealing with lots of with high technical products, we need to leverage other people's contribution because really they have big knowledge on those parts. And so this is a key factor for our work. And not so long ago, we were working on a project with, of course, as I said, lots of stakeholders involved. And we tried our best to involve them all along the process by sharing all our design evolution. But we weren't really getting much feedback, just minor comments, but the main thread was all good, let's move on. And we all know what this means, right? Either you've done a great job or the people in front of us didn't really get what we were trying to show them. And I think you can all imagine what was our case. So blinded by moving things forward and also a good dose of ingenuity, the project moves on until we started to release some pieces of work in beta for employees so that we could test what we were working on. And so the project at this point started to circulate around the company, and at that point things started to get really chaotic. Suddenly, everyone had an opinion on every little detail. There were problems popping out from everywhere, and some people weren't really aware of what we were working on. Some others misunderstood something. Some stakeholder left, some new stakeholders came in, so it was a mess. And we reached a point where we had to sit down all together and decide whether to proceed with the project or abandon it. And so in the end, we managed to resolve the crisis. We basically had to restart the project from ground up. But the point is that our project started when it was meant to end. So this is a very extreme example, but I could have told you many others because this is a scenario I encountered many times when we only started receiving feedback when the project was getting at the end. So design work and product work in general happens in the context of the broader organization, including leadership and various stakeholders that are representing various areas of the business. And all of those people have specific interests in the work that we are doing, goals to achieve through our work, and ultimately they can also help us find good solutions and also see problems through different lenses since they have knowledge in their area of expertise. And as designers, we can do the best work in the world, but if we are not able to get others along the way with us, our work won't go ahead healthily. And this is why it's super important to get them involved effectively, because they can ultimately contribute in making or breaking not just our design, but really product work in general. So as designers, we produce lots of deliverables to support our design work. And all those deliverables are somehow all tangible representation of our thinking. But it's not just that, because all those artifacts that we create also play a huge role in helping us communicate with others on what we're working on. And it's not something that serves just design. In fact, also, my colleagues from other departments, from other teams, are using my design to discuss their own challenges in their own teams. And this is why I think that design owns a very special place inside the product development process, because we help our team bringing ideas to life. We make things tangible. Something that was just an abstract idea before is now something that can be seen by other people. And since humans are visual creatures, inevitably design work becomes a playground where many conversations are taking place. And it's not conversation related just around design, it's really a conversation that could spiral from product, tech, compliance, marketing. I mean, in a sense, design acts as a catalyst for many conversations that revolve around the product development process. But the point is that sometimes having effective conversations around design can be challenging. People come from diverse backgrounds, we might have different experience, and we might also have all different level of shared understanding. And then often design involves very complex concept and abstract concepts, which can be difficult to explain and also understand. So this is why I think it's super important for us to start shifting part of our focus from the artifact to the conversations that design can generate. and start seeing design work not just as the ultimate goal, but also a way for us to facilitate meaningful conversation happening around the product development process. And in this way, we can really be more mindful on how we shape those conversations. So we can really support like product discovery in uncovering potential issues, misunderstanding, improve feedback loops, collaboration, but also alignment across team. So I remember this other time when we were presenting a design in a meeting and a stakeholder wasn't really convinced about something we had built. And the discussion went on for what it felt like an eternity. And I tried my best to explain the reasoning behind the decision. And in the end, the person seemed to agree with me. But then, surprise, surprise, the same concern popped out again at the end of the project. So the thing is that explaining our rationale, it's something super important, but what I noticed also in design critiques with my colleagues is that sometimes we tend to overdo it. And our conversation ends up looking a lot like this, which doesn't really look like a conversation. So while it's important to explain our design rationale to others, sometimes we can become so focused on it that we end up not truly listening to others people's feedback or really listening to other people's concern. And we may end up risking to shut down like other people's voices, missing out on valuable insight, or also start missing some very obvious things such as red flags, and really missing the opportunity to address them at the right time. And so we end up with those things popping out again at the end of the project. So the point is like, let's not pitch our design, but let's focus instead on try to break it. What I mean is that rather than seeking validation from the start, we should actively try to break our design by asking thought-provoking questions and try to stress test our design as much as we can in early stages so that we can really trigger difficult conversation from the start and we can identify potential weak spots or like issues before moving forward. And this is especially true like on project that like for like the ones we are working on where there is a lot of ambiguity and where we need to still to figure things out really. So let's use our design as a starting point for discussion and not like as the end point. So personally, what I started to do a lot more is that I started to like replace presentations with conversations. So rather than like delivering a one-way monologue through slides that wasn't really getting across the message that we were there to collaborate, but instead it was like putting people in a listener observer mode rather than actively collaborator. So instead, we started to bring people in the behind the scene in our working file, which was creating a more collaborative work environment. What we also started doing a lot more was asking questions. So based on what we want to get from the session, asking a lot of more questions to challenge our design and also engage our audience to encourage them to think more deeply about the work that we were sharing. So this is another way that allows us to like uncover potential weak spots from the very start and also learn more about the problem and gain more insights about what we were trying to solve. And something that we also started to experiment with lately is like working backwards. So putting on the table something that we know it's completely wrong and like full of assumptions just for the sake of getting the conversation started, like getting people to talk. And this really helped us also like leverage the ambiguity inside the discovery to our advantage, because we can get our ambiguity answered through those like artifacts that we put on the table so that people like start to like really raising concern on those things that we put on the table. So bringing someone into a complex design problem can be overwhelming because it takes time to explain the domain, the goals, the strategy, because before you can get to the point. And moreover, it's quite impossible to think that we were able like to uncover everything right away in a single session. And also, as I said at the start, a lot of things can change from the start to the end of a project. And this is why it's super important for us to share early and often and allow plenty of opportunities for those stakeholders to like really raise their concern and give their contribution. But it's easier said than done. I mean, there are a lot of things that can hold us back from like sharing our work. For example, there is a lot going on inside product teams, lots of interaction, discussion. We are so focused on moving things forward quickly that sometimes it can be difficult to keep the same level of alignment and shared understanding with people also outside our team. And also remote work doesn't really help because all those conversations that were happening almost by accident or naturally when we were working just a few desks away, now those conversations need to be intentionally put in place. Like conversation needs to be pushed, communication needs to be pushed a lot more. And also including people in our work, it's hard. I mean, it takes up a lot of energy. Because asking for feedback and being open to collaboration means being open to put things into question. So imagine you've spent hours with your team trying to figure out a certain problem on how to solve a certain problem, and then someone walks in and everything is like putting into question by someone who has less context than you maybe. So it's hard, it's difficult. And we are also humans, so we tend to like reduce all of this noise and this disruption. So it's very easy to end up telling ourselves such things as, we don't have time for this now, we can handle this on our own, we are empowered teams, we can take this decision on our own. And while we tell ourselves all those things, in order to move things forward, we'd end up delaying conversation until it's too late, or maybe not asking for feedback at all. And so it's very easy to find yourself like working in a silo without even realizing it. So this is what happened to us really in the first little story that I told you. And the main problem is also that the less you involve people in your work, the harder it will get to involve them in the future, since the lack of shared understanding will increase more and more. So what we started inside my team to be more mindful about is to like develop some habits to share our work early and often. So what we started doing is that we started to, instead of relying on milestone to share our work, or like when there's something to share kind of thing, we started to set up really recurring catch-ups with our main stakeholders. So that was very useful for us because it reduced a lot of the friction in asking for feedback. It forces us to share our work because the slot is there, people are there, so someone needs to like talk about something, needs to share something. So this really was super helpful for us to really allow plenty of opportunities for us to share our work and also for our stakeholders to give their contribution. And of course, this also helped us keeping the same level of alignment across various teams and also, of course, with our main stakeholders. Something else that we started to do a lot more in general is that we started to share our work more around the company and make our work more visible around the company. So we have lots of opportunities company-wise. We have knowledge sharing sessions, we have product demos, we have town halls, so lots of opportunities. And we started to leverage those like sessions a lot more. And it's very nice because each time we share something, during those moments, we have always someone who like writes to us to like connect or say something about the work or like just give us some feedback. And this is amazing also because we all work remotely. And so this also allows us to build connection and also meet new people across the company. What we also started doing is that we started to run some guerrilla user testing sessions around the company, which is not really meant to like replace the traditional user testing sessions with our customer, of course, even though this is still super helpful to uncover like potential usability issues. But this was really a way for us to, again, make our work circulate more around the company and have like other teams' perspective on our work to gain more insights again, or really identify some concern or some issues. And so, as I mentioned before, humans are visual creatures. So seeing things with our own eyes really helps us to understand things, since we don't really have to use our own imagination. And this is also why design conversations often involve visual support, such as sketches, wireframe, prototypes, and so on. But the point is that not all supports will trigger the same response. So one day we were like reviewing a design and we were sharing like this user flow with our stakeholders. So lots of text boxes, arrow, that kind of thing. But we weren't really able to engage people effectively. So the only feedback that we were getting was, again, all good, let's move forward kind of feedback that we discussed about earlier. But then looking at people's expression, staring at this thing, it was more or less like this. So not very reassuring. So we tried to move into something a little bit more high fidelity. And here the situation was completely the opposite. And the conversation really started to get chaotic. So people started to raise all types of concern, and conversation were spiraling from content, architecture, visual design. Can we make the button bigger kind of thing? Yes, also this one. And we were basically all staring at the same thing, but we were like talking about all different things. So the point is that our deliverables, our artifacts should really help us facilitate our conversation. But the problem is that if they are too abstract, they can hardly trigger discussion, because it requires from people a lot of effort to be conceptualized. And it can also be a real struggle for people who have not like contributed in building this model with us to really visualize and understand what we are trying to show them. And at this point, like trying to skip to a more high or mid fidelity seems the only way to get our point across. But if they look too polished and final, it may derail the conversation, because we are introducing so many factors to the discussion that can spiral again from architecture, strategy, and so on. And sometimes also say, please, can we just focus on X, Y, Z? It's not enough. I mean, I tried myself like this thing plenty of times and it never worked, because people were really getting distracted by all the things they were like seeing on the screen. So what I started to be more mindful about lately is to like try to use visual support strategically in order to facilitate the right conversation based on who is in front of us and also what we want to achieve. So it's really about how we try to complement our verbal communication so that we can get across our message and be understood by others. So, for example, instead of sharing this kind of models with lots of text boxes and arrows, probably now what we are currently doing is that we are sharing some like more low fidelity model, which is basically the same thing as we saw before, but like just with screens and in forms of screens, and that you can, or that we can populate as much as we want. I mean, if we don't have content and we don't know exactly what's gonna go inside that step, we just have an empty like step with just like the name of the step. And this really helped, we noticed that this really helped like people visualize those abstract models that we saw before. And also this really allows us to give relevance to each of those moments and like stop on that moment and maybe try to tell a story of what will happen inside that step. And also something super interesting are priority guides, which is an alternative to wireframe, which puts like the focus on the content. So from the top to the bottom, with the priority of the content that we're gonna have in that particular screen. So if I have that, I would probably also put this as well in that model. So here I linked a very nice article from a list apart. If then you want to read it, it's very interesting. And then also something that we started to be more mindful about, it's also to like focus just on one scenario. So if we have a very complex flow, maybe we also have not just what the user is doing, but also what like operation, for example, is doing behind the scene to support this flow for our customer. Like we would go like just one flow at a time. Corner cases, the same, like just one flow at a time in order to avoid people to like get distracted or like not follow through easily on what we are showing to them. And so maybe at this point, what someone might think is that, okay, so should I turn all my product, all my mockups into like low to mid fidelity, or the thing that we saw earlier, in order to like get people focused on what I want? I would say no. So it's something that I started to do at the very beginning when I joined the company. I was like, if I had to work on a particular flow, like turn everything into like low fidelity. But the issue there is that people were getting lost. They were basically weren't recognizing our product anymore, because of course people have references around our product. So what I basically started doing is that I started to use some visual references on the product that I'm working on. So really use visual elements as anchors so that people can clearly see where they are inside the product. And so basically what we are ending up with, it's something little like really hybrid. So a mix between high, low, mid, and everything like that. So, but we said that this may distract people because there are some elements in high fidelity. So what, again, we started doing is that we also started to remove or enhance some elements in those flow. So for example, to really drive people attention. So for example, like keep those anchors that we talked about earlier, but like remove the opacity of it so people can still see where they are, but they are not getting distracted, or like it's clear that that's not the focus of the session. And or also like remove some step completely if like those steps are not really helping us providing context to the session that we are having. Then something else, this is a project we worked on, and here the issue was that there were things happening outside our platform. So basically the customer had to perform stuff outside the platform, like download forms, print them and fill them and send it back to us. Yeah, I know it's not ideal, but that's not the point of this slide. But the thing is that what I was usually doing is like having little post-it notes with just like written on it, like, okay, the customer will do this and that outside the platform. But again, this wasn't really helping getting across the message of like what was really happening. And so what we started doing is that we started like turning those little post-it notes with this text in like little people doing stuff. And this really helped us not just getting across the message, but also give some relevance to that particular moment, so that really we could stop and have a discussion on that particular moment and really understand what wasn't really working or all the downside of that particular moment. And so related to this, so don't talk about screen, but talk about people doing stuff. That's much stronger, like telling a story of like your customer doing things throughout your product. It's much more powerful than talking about pieces of screen on, rather than talking about pieces of screen. And you really help people relate to the story that you're trying to tell. So as you probably have noticed, uncertainty and ambiguity, it's part of our job. We've all been there. We are working on very complex products with lots of stakeholders involved and with last-minute changes. So it sometimes can be really overwhelming. But I truly believe that if we start focusing more on the conversations that design generates rather than the design artifact itself, we can really help in fostering better conversation around product work, in also uncovering potential issues, misunderstanding, improve feedback, and really support the discovery phase for the whole product team. So don't pitch your design, share early and often, and use visual support strategically. And these are some books, if you are interested in diving a bit more around those topics, that really helped me in understanding a bit more what was going on. And thank you so much for joining me today again. And if there are any questions, I'm here. But also, if you want to have a chat outside the platform, I will be super happy to meet you. So thank you again so much for joining today.
Excellent. Yes, that's true. You can always network with Nicole or anyone else. Kimberly asks if you can swap back to the book slide just for a moment,
yes,
so
sorry.
that everybody can see that. That was a great way to present books. I always just do it with a list on the slide, but that's wonderful. Show the books themselves. We had a couple of good questions, Nicole, if you don't mind taking those. Long asked, when you are showing your design work, especially when you are deliberately challenging your own design, what kinds of questions do you ask? What sort of approaches do you take when you are deliberately pushing the design to see if it will break or if you can improve it?
Yeah, this is a very great question. So what we would usually do is that we basically know where we have things that we don't really know about. Maybe we have a, not sensation, but we know more or less the things that we want to uncover inside our design. So I'm not a metaphor, but like an analogy that I like doing, it's like when you prepare a user test with your customers, it's basically doing the same, like you're preparing your user test for your stakeholders. So what I usually do is that probably I know more or less what are like the gray areas of our design and things like that. So I will really go and dive deeper into those things, and especially also try to understand if what we tried to represent there is what they had in mind. Lots of times, the things that we are working with are super technical, so it's really difficult also to get it right from the start, because we really need to leverage other people's knowledge from, for example, asset allocation. Like, we don't have like super technical financial knowledge, so we need those people, you know, to get things right. So sometimes what we try to do is that we try to get it right. So we put things on the table, as I said, and then we go to those people and say, okay, does this make sense to you? Is this right to you? Would you make it different? Or things like that. So really around understanding that. And then what else? Yeah, something else that we also like to do is that maybe we do this before, but yeah, conversation that we have really often is with our customer support. We ask them a lot of time, is this the conversation that you would have with our customer if they were in front of you? Like, understand what the conversation would be if there wasn't screens in the middle from the customer, between the customer and us. So really understand if this would be the conversation that our customer support will have with our customer in real life. So yeah, I don't know if this answered the question, but yeah, this really try to stress test, like uncover all the gray areas that you really don't know about, try to understand if what you are putting on the table, is this what they had in mind or not, and dive deeper, like really try to learn more about the topic and the problem at hand. Use the design to really talk about the topic.
Very good answer. Thank you. And there was another remark, not really a question, but I wanted to develop it into a question.
Yeah.
Angel remarked that getting into an echo chamber is bad, and the more perspectives you can get, the better. And that's sort of a pain point for me, because for a lot of technical communicators, we're almost, I don't want to say afraid, apprehensive about getting other feedback and perspectives. It makes us, nervous to get that, but it's really important, as Angel says, it's really important to get that. Could you talk just a little bit about what methods you use to expose your design work to other departments for the specific purpose of getting feedback and perspectives?
Yeah, so I really, really feel this topic because as I said, we ended up with our team in this like silo without really even realizing it. So it's really a very tricky topic. And yes, so how I would like expose, so something that really helped me was like to know more the structure of the company. So know more the people inside, like all the teams that were there, who was doing what, who to reach. So this really helped me, because when I joined, in my previous company, we were just like 5 people. And so I ended up in this other company. Now we are 200, which is not enormous, but it's not like the 5 people where I was before. So it was completely new, like to really, okay, so how do I navigate all those teams and all those different people? I don't know what they are doing. So really, this really helped me really understand who is there and who can really help me, like providing feedback on my work. And then really be very, very, how can we say, now I don't have the word in English, like when you are very disciplined, disciplined in asking for feedback, like really acknowledge the fact that you may have lots of things that may get in your way. And we always talk as designer about ego, like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared of getting feedback because I don't want to get criticism or things like that. But really what I learned navigating all those things is that, like, it's not just ego. It's like we need to get things done quickly, and we have priorities. And so really, when you get so much feedback, it's difficult because you started to get distractions, and you really end up having lots of things that are getting along the way from the deadline, from like releasing the thing that you need to release. So it's really not just about ego or like things like that, but it's really around we need to get things done quickly. So yeah, this is what I learned. So really be more mindful that there are lots of things that can get along across the way, getting feedback super early, and really be disciplined, put in place some stuff that forces you to go outside and talk to people. And when you know people, it's also easier because then you become friends. So it's easier to know, like also send screenshot around, and you start to build those relationships. It's super important.
Well, that's good, and actually leads into another question just came up from Pablo. He says
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard to get stakeholders to challenge your designs because they don't want to raise conflict. Maybe maybe
Yeah.
people won't say something because they don't want to buck the trend. They don't want to raise any conflict. So he asks if you have suggestions about how to
Mm.
encourage stakeholders to feel free to speak up and challenge the design. That's a good question,
Yeah.
Pablo.
Yeah, this is a very good question. Probably, I guess, like bringing them like to work with you on it, maybe like just like getting really across the message that you are working with them side by side. Probably this is what I would do. Like really ask very specific questions so that you can really show them that you need them to do the work. It's not like, please give me feedback, because it's really, I need you. I need you because you have the knowledge and I don't. So I need you. Yeah, it's really around that, I think. Yeah.
Very good.
This is what I understood lately in like working on those very complex projects. I need those people, because without those people, I wouldn't be able to do my job really. So
Quite right. Okay. We are coming up to the end of our time here. I want to thank Nicole for a very, very nice presentation
thank you so
and for
much to all of
graciously
you.
presenting in English for the rest of us. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
thanks to everyone. We had almost 50 people in this session. Very nice number.
Oh, thank you so much
And
to all of you, really.
indeed, we will have, I think, a short break now, and then there will be another presentation at the bottom of the hour. That's about 15, 20 minutes away. And Nicole, as she mentioned earlier in the session, she and everyone is available in networking. You can private message people. You can
Yeah.
start little individual video calls if you want to chat. And it's always up to you and the other person, whether you want to chat. And I guess that's it. So I want to thank everyone again, especially Nicole. Thank you.
Oh,
And
thank
we'll
you
see
so
you
much to
all
all of
at the
you.
next session in a few minutes.
Yeah. Thank you. Ciao, everyone. Ciao,
Thanks.
ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.